Hello, everybody. Oops. And welcome to the Titanforge podcast, episode 54. My name is Ratnos, joined by Tettles.
Hello, Dratnos.
And this week, our special guest, Complexity Limit's own Xyronic. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Welcome. So Xyronic, of course, taking some time out of this new Path of Exile League launch to come join us on the show. And what we are going to talk about this week. Last week when we had Xyronic, or not last week, but last time we had Xyronic on was after the Race to World First concluded. And we had him and Preheat on to talk about all that kind of stuff. There he was joining us in his capacity as a Complexity Limit Raider. This time, he's going to be joining us in his capacity as an MDI caster, which is something that all three of us have done this most recent MDI time around. And we figured we would talk about that this week because this week, Trell is moving. So he is not going to be able to join us this week. He's busy right now, moving the whole day. So that's why he's not
How
here.
lucky.
Yeah, gets to dodge an entire Titanforge podcast as a result of that.
It gets allowed to dodge a full Titanforge podcast under the pretense of he has to move his whole house. What a bargain.
Yeah, yep. That's he definitely got the easy end of that stick for sure. Anyways, Xyronic, in the past few months since the Race to World First, what have you been up to?
Man, you know what? Not a whole lot. Just playing other games. I started pushing some keys lately in the past few weeks just to kind of get back into it. Other than that, not a whole lot. Just gaming.
Yeah, you've been you re-rolled over to Mage for keys, right?
Yeah.
How's that been going for you?
That's fun playing the most overpowered class in the game.
Been getting many invites.
Oh yeah, pretty decent amount.
The old Zyroblast in demand.
It's always tough getting back into it, right? Because people are always wary. Even though people are like, oh, I know he's a good player. It's just like there's a lot of people that don't really want to deal with someone having to, relearn all of the mechanics that they've been kind of learning over the course of the expansion. So bit of a struggle at first, but kind of getting back into it.
Nobody wants to be the person who like teaches you all the dungeons, right? And like all the stuff through all the dungeons, and you need to find people to do that with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I think you're not the only person who's been in that position. Like there have been now, of course, there's been like 8 patches where there's been Mythic Plus, right, since the start of Legion, and people have come in and out of it. And I definitely think that feeling of like returning to it and knowing that there's like a lot that's going on and not knowing exactly what it is or what each of the mechanics is supposed to be is a really tough position to be in, especially because there's really no like comprehensive resource for learning all of the nuances of Mythic Plus. People ask about it all the time. That's one of the most common things that people ask me about, at least, is like a spreadsheet where there's just like a list of every knowledge you need to know about Mythic Plus. But that it's such
practice.
Obviously, if one existed, that'd be really cool. But it is not as easy to make as it sounds.
Well, it's like writing a guide. It's like, so say you wrote a guide to how to ride a bicycle, and it's like the best way of riding a bicycle is actually just going out in front and riding the bicycle yourself, and you just have to practice and you have to attempt. And Dratnos is rubbing his face.
The best way to ride a bicycle is to ride a bicycle. Yep.
Well, you just have to practice it, right? You can research and read like all the information you want about Mythic Plus, but at the end of the day, like your best resource for doing it is doing it, right?
I don't know. I mean, I do think there's space for like, man, my hair is not cooperating. I do think there's space for for some kind of resource that told you like, okay, here's the mage tricks in this dungeon, like press invisibility right when you get targeted by Cujo if you're the farthest away, and you can maybe invis it. Press
we could ask
these
like
spots, and you can go to these cool places. But
yeah, so there's class specific stuff, but then people ask like, oh, which mobs are affected by stops and which ones should you kick? And you're like, you literally have to try them all. Like,
well,
okay,
but you could,
it's going to be affected by stops. Some abilities on mobs are affected by stops and some are affected by kicks. And it's like, it's hard to like create a comprehensive list of every single ability in the game that's a caster. And you're like, oh shit, disrupt the wash away, kick the water bolt.
Yeah, making a fully comprehensive source like that would be extremely difficult. And some people have tried, but it's very difficult to go from, the first half of that project to actually finishing the last half of it.
Well, also, mage is like the worst class to learn dungeons on too, because not only do you have to like know what's going to kill you when you walk into a dungeon, but you need to know like 2-minute timings because you have to set up 20 seconds in advance for every time you want to do damage. So if someone dies or someone makes a mistake while you're learning, you just lose a large portion of your burst damage. It's really difficult to actually play around.
I think it's interesting watching tanks like old skilled tanks try to get back into Mythic Plus too. I think I saw Lapon recently jumping into like 24s and 25s, and that guy was so insane in Legion. And watching him be able to jump back into 24s and 25s with some minor hiccups was impressive.
Yeah, it's definitely very cool to watch, and I hope that we see more people. You know, it's really encouraging that we're just going to get to hit the ground fresh in Shadowlands as well. Right, everybody's going to be back on the same page. So everybody who's looking to get back into Mythic Plus or looking to get into Mythic Plus at all, if they want to get started, then is going to be a great time to do so. All right, let's see. So we're going to talk a little bit about casting WoW events and stuff. That's part of our main topic later. We're also going to talk a little bit about Shadowlands legendaries, and then we'll also do a tiny bit of complaining about the current state of the game as well, because we can't have an episode without doing that. So those are the three main things that we'll be doing this week. First, though, before we do all that, let's thank our supporters over at patreon.com for supporting our show every week. They are Paul of US Proudmore, Ahar of US Proudmore, King of Skills, VTech XD, Zuko, Ja, Drunk Swede from Legion of Lemmings Argent Dawn EU, I Wish I Was Dratnos' Dino Pillow, Heltari, Blue of Emerald Dream, Chromed, Seraphicus, Trekkie, The Marsh Hare, Regulus, Nevernude, Chewy. We need an M+ affix for Horrific Visions and a Horrific Vision affix for M+. Actually, I tried to get them to put split personality in for MDI, but they wouldn't. Coke Dogs Gopher.
Did you say split personality all the
time? Rude Dinosaur. Dude, could you imagine the JB tweet if they...
I can keep reading, just shut up.
Astral Recall Best Res. Can we call Blood of the Corruptor, the Blob, Sloppy Joe instead? Delete yourself. For a small fee, we'll join your group and scuff your key. Hiding from Gunker's Big Suck. Dazboot, Better Mage Than Tal. Brought to you by Dratnos the Excel Wizard. Brad Ceratops. Hunter Pet AI, Best AI. That is blatantly false.
Shit.
I wear 5 masks in public to fight the Rona. Necris knows that Trell has a secret second account where he plays Prop Paladin. Anastasia of US Proudmore. Revdil. Shadow Priest can pump if you chain pull, just give them a chance. And Riley wants us to call the spider Kicky Dicky. Thanks everybody for your support and and nice set of name changes there for this week. Of course, if you want to change your name on this thing, just get in contact with us in the Discord channel is the best place.
What would be worse, split personality or Leadenfoot?
Dude, could you imagine if they put just an M+ where it's just tyrannical, split personality, Leadenfoot, Scorched Feet as the affixes?
Yes, Scorched Feet is the one I want to see. I want to see characters just jumping all over the place.
Dude, I could just imagine tanks with Leadenfoot right now. Basically, every single pull, you watch a tank and they pop a Lightfoot potion and they group all the mobs for you. And it's like, no, man, you just got to walk.
You just play Holy Paladin and Freedom them, right? Or Rep Paladin and Freedom them on pull.
You know what? That's probably right, actually. Yeah.
I just want to see a Taldazar with Scorched Feet, and you just see the tanks try to get into the staff spots and just yeet off of the edge.
or what if they use the Scorched Feet to leap themselves onto the spot?
Oh, wait, that would be epic. Okay, that maybe if Scorched Feet was available in M+, there would be some new strategies actually. Maybe it would be used.
They jump and move forward a little bit and go, whoop.
That would be good. All right. So, speaking of the MDI, let's talk about how we got started, all three of us casting World of Warcraft events. I guess it's ironic, as our guest, you can have the first tale to tell here. How did you go from, how did you get into playing the MDI, first of all, and then how did you go from that to casting it?
So similar to what we were talking about just for this expansion here, I got into Mythic Plus late in Legion as well. Mm-hmm. And I found the team that I really liked pushing in Plus with, and we just decided to play in the MDI together. The core of the squad was Hadrian tanking, Luffy healing. I'm fired up as a DPS player. Then we we're looking for the third DPS for a while and figured that a rogue would be a good player, so we picked up Zongo as our fifth. And we ended up playing in the MDI, somehow squeaked out second in the North American region, and qualified for the first ever global finals. And while we were at global finals, well, we sucked. We lost at global finals. But since it was a 3-day event and everyone like kind of wanted to stick around and play together, we kind of just sat in the back room watching all the matches and kind of just shut the shit. We talked about the matches, we commented over them, talked about what the players were doing. And while we were doing that, one of the tournament admins kind of approached me afterwards like, you kind of have a good knack for this. You should be considered casting. And I hadn't at that point. But, I think about 2 or 3 months down the line, I ended up putting together a demo, a sample, and sending it in. So that's how I got into it.
All right, Tettles, how about you? What was where'd you get your start in casting?
Dratnus is sitting here smiling as he banned somebody in my chat.
It's a guilty of mine.
So I guess in a roundabout way, it was like, I guess it was probably partially due to the MDI. It was partially due to I guess it was like due to the Wowhead guide and then like making YouTube videos, because at that point, then I guess I started getting a little bit more notoriety. Sours recommended me for casting the Race to World First in Battle of Dazar'alor out of the blue. Like, this is just the most obscure reference, and it's like I had like no knowledge or understanding of how to cast or anything, and it was just like, all right, on a whim, you know what, F it, we're gonna go for it. And so then I did cast the Race to World First. I did okay. I will say that I could have done better, but I did okay. And then after that, I got asked if I wanted to cast a couple weekends of MDI, the spring split of 2019 MDI. And I don't know. They thought I did an okay enough job, and I've been fooling people ever since.
So I was actually there for that. So for you and I both started casting the same split together, right?
Yeah.
I got offered the job first, but we needed another caster. And I remember we were watching the Race to World First, in the MDI caster Discord. And I believe it was Sean who was watching it. And I forget who you were casting with.
Hotted.
I wasn't going to say his name. I remember who it was. But whoever you were casting with was just like stonewalling. They weren't saying anything. And you had like 8 hours to fill by yourself. And they were really impressed by that. So I think that's one of the main reasons you got kind of the nod to get going with the MDI.
Yeah, and then my path to it was pretty much the same as Tettle's, just a year later, where I got an invite to cast the Race to World First in Nyalotha off of like content creation and that general stuff there. Tier list content creation. I think Limit Max probably helped out there behind the scenes. I believe helped get me in my foot in the door there, which very grateful for. And then from there, after casting the Race to World First, the MDI people got in touch with me as well. And then all three of us got to cast this most recent split, which was not as easy as I was hoping it would be, because we all had to do it from home. And
I will say, as the newest person in the Death Strat knows, significantly easier in person, I will admit.
Yeah, doing that thing from home is man, that was challenging compared to like casting the Race to World First in person at the at the studio, right, where you could like look at the other person and see when they wanted to talk, versus even this, right? Even when we're doing the podcast right now, I have all three of our pictures over on one screen, and I have all of our video feeds, so I can kind of see if Tettles wants to say something. But when we were casting the MDI, all without, we didn't even have that feed, right? We didn't have video feed of each other, so we were just out here like kind of guessing. It was very difficult, but even still, even with that, with it being pretty different and harder to put together, I think it was really, really fun thing to do. So that's why this episode we'll talk all about, I guess, just kind of casting and the craft of casting, which of course in World of Warcraft, right, it's not really like,
play by play.
Well, all three of us, if you listen to our stories, all three of us just kind of randomly got into casting, right? Maybe we had wanted to do casting, Tettles and I had, but like it's not like there's a clear and established path through which one becomes a caster in World of Warcraft, right? Like you kind of just get an opportunity maybe, off of a result of either being a player or being a content creator. And from there, if you're good at casting already, you get to do more casting, and that's, I don't know, it's kind of a weird path, right? There's not like a academy or anything.
Yeah, I guess you could. I guess the groundwork is definitely built off of content creation in that regard, right? So you have to be like a notable figure in the community, be able to even be offered that. You have to be knowledgeable about either Raid or Mythic Plus, like Race to World First casting, or Mythic Plus. Like in Jet's case, Jet Jaguar, he cast the Race to World First with us. Storied Mythic Raider, rated in complexity limit for a long time. He does a great job of casting the Race to World First every single time because he has a lot of history and a lot of stuff to tell. But you have to have connections as well.
Yeah, he'll just be like, oh yes, this reminds me of something in 1963 when we were fighting against Ragnaros Senior, and that boss was the first introduction of a tank mechanic. Back before then, we didn't have tanks, but that was the first tier where we had one of those. And, so always good to get a little injection of history there. Tuttle's all right over there?
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, how about you, Xyronic? Do you have any tips for anybody who wanted to become a caster? Want to try and get into it?
God, it just like you're saying, it seems like it's so random to get a shot to do it nowadays. Like, I don't think there's too much of a thing you can do to actually, get a better shot rather than doing the things you said, right? Mm-hmm. Content creation and getting your name out there.
I think the Keystone Masters tournament, actually, for any aspiring MDI casters, that one is one where you can they try actively to get people who haven't casted before to cast it. So if you're really engaged in it, I would look into that one as that was the first thing I cast, actually. It was Keystone Masters last year.
I also think that Race to World First casting, there's just like a need for so many casters for Race to World First because they have to fill out a bunch of different blocks. And realistically, you can only work like 8 hours a day without just losing your mind, like mid-show. Like you can only cast so many hours before you just before it just becomes not healthy and your casting starts to suffer. So they need a large amount of casters for both of the Race to World First events that we've been having. So doing good content creation and just getting your foot in the door via a Race to World First event is also a great opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean that's still not easy, not as easy, I'd say, to get started with than the Keystone Masters path, but I think it is definitely easier than just jumping right into something Blizzard sponsored, right? That's the kind of, I think to cast some kind of Blizzard event at this point, you have to cast something else, pretty much. I know, Zyra, sorry, I cut you off earlier if you had more to say there as well.
Well, in terms of something that will help people with casting, I'm pretty sure the same people who do Keystone Masters are planning to do some sort of caster workshop style event pretty soon. So that might help with that.
Yeah, actually, I heard in the near future that was something that they were potentially in the next 7 days or so.
What does that entail?
I don't actually know.
MDI casters or something.
I think it's aspiring casters demoing casts, and other casters that actually are qualified will critique them and say what they can do better, stuff like that. I'm pretty sure that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah, it's
so
tough.
None of us are qualified to critique.
No, we're not. Well, that's the thing.
Right. We didn't. None of us have a sport casting degree or whatever, which does exist, but I don't know, that it's more, I guess, instincts and stuff that. And I guess there are some things that we've learned right along the way, about not having just complete silence on the air for 10 seconds or 20 seconds all that often, and not shutting down people's points when they make one, making sure you ask questions in an open-ended way that lets people, especially if you're the host job, because that's something people don't realize is people just kind of talk about casters, but there are 3 distinct different casting roles on our MDI desk, right? We have the host, who's historically that's been Automatic Jack or Sloot or Aya, those sorts of people who they drive the conversation, right? And they bring us in from breaks and send us out to breaks and send us into the match and take us out of the match. And then during the match, there's actually the 2 casters usually, and they're just talking to each other and commentating the match. And, in game, it's usually just the 2 of their voices you're hearing. And then after the game's over, the host brings back in those casters and an analyst as well, whose job was to watch the game and, you know, talk about something interesting they saw along the way, or just bring kind of a little bit more of a analysis to it. That's why they're called the analyst.
Historically, we used the analyst as like a learning tool, and we used it to try to be able to teach people like things that they can use in their like day-to-day runs, or just give a better understanding as to why something is epic or why something is cool in terms of how the dungeon is being pulled on an MDI stage. That's how we've used the analyst in the past. This season, analyst has been very, very hard to use because of working remotely.
Yeah, the analyst role this time around, when we were trying to come up with like replay segments are like a big thing the analyst can bring in, and this time around we just, as the analyst, we couldn't actually watch the replay, so we knew that they were cutting to replay, and we knew about how long the replay was, and we knew what clips we'd put into the replay, but we just for like 1 minute would just talk about what we thought was happening on the replay at the time and like hope that we were kind of close. It was not an easy job, actually, nor was it. It was really exhausting as well to be the analyst, I'd say, compared to casting.
I felt like I was just hard winging it the entire time. That's all right, though.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. All right, somebody in chat has a question here. Sober Cannibal asks, how is working with Rich Campbell? Tettles, you want to take this one?
Oh, man. Okay, so I guess my first experience working with Rich has been like Race to World First events, and those are very easy working with Rich. Rich is actually one of the easiest people to work with ever, because he hits you just like, he'll toss you the most softball questions. Remember Dratnus is talking about like what the host is supposed to do? Like basically they're supposed to facilitate conversation, and nobody is better at doing that, I feel like, than Rich Campbell, because he leads you into just the most home run hitting questions every single time. Like Rich and Jack are both very good, but they're good at different things. Rich is like the casuals people, like he is a man of the people, and Jack has a very good high understanding of the game, and he'll lead you into just questions where you can express like what's happening at a higher level a little bit better. But they're both very good at their job, and they're both very good in different ways. Working with Rich Campbell, very easy, and he is hilarious.
Yeah. I got to cast an alpha dungeon event on the Method channel with him hosting like a month ago, and oh my goodness, was that easy. That's the thing that you kept saying every time Rich ever came up, was it was just so easy to work with him, and it's definitely true. It's like he just makes it so that you never have to, you know, if sometimes when you're casting, you have these moments where you're like kind of floundering, and you're like, oh no, you know, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna say? I need to come up with something, and in those spots Rich just like comes in and saves you every single time. It's really great. All right,
Zara, you got anything to say? Like,
I mean, you guys nailed it. He's super easy to work with. He makes you look good. He takes examples too. Like I remember when we were working on the MDI at BlizzCon last year, we're like, hey, toss us with this, and he's like, don't know what you're saying, but got it. and he did it. It was great.
Oh, he never knows what you're saying. That's part of his charm, is that he doesn't know what you're talking about, and he'll hit you back with questions that he has about the game himself, and it's just like, honestly, this is great. I like this.
Yeah, especially because you know there are people in the audience as well that have those kinds of questions. So it's nice to keep it kind of grounded in the not, you know, in the stuff that not everybody, or that people know, that people don't know who haven't played the game like 8 hours a day or more for the entire expansion. All right, so since we were talking a little bit about Rich, you know, Rich has obviously been in the Race to World First events, Jack in the MDI events, right? And both of those are they're two very different, well, not very different types of events, but they are two, I guess I will go back with very different. They're two very different types of events, right? Zyro, you have competed in both events, and you've done a little bit of casting in both events as well, right? In the Race to World First, you kind of get you last time you had some of these like guest slots on the caster desk. Whenever obviously your first role there was as a raider, but you did do a little bit of casting as well. What have been your impressions of the differences between those two different event formats?
I mean, the big difference with Race to World First is that it's very much like a fill thing, right? You're on the desk for what, 4 to 8 hours, depending on your shift. And there's honestly not a lot of analytical casting that can go on, right? You can only talk about what they're doing every single pull for so long before they're doing the exact same thing for a couple hours. So it's a lot of fill content. It's a lot of keeping people interested, and it's a lot of kind of talking to the chat. And it's very different from the MDI, where there's a lot going on, where you have to cover, you know, from time to time. There's almost always something going on that you can talk about on that cast. So that's the first major difference. I don't really know if there's anything outside of that I would want to go into.
Yeah, like sporting events wise, it's kind of like casting like the Tour de France versus a football game, right? Like one of them is just, it's like this marathon event that you're showing up every day and like interesting stuff is going to happen, but also 99% of the time they're just going to be like going, and you can either talk about what's on the screen or you can just have a conversation or whatever and let the content be organically developing.
I think that the Tour de France is actually a great example of how Race to World First is, and you have to strike like a decent balance. So where I normally try to get in is like I try to talk about the boss pull maybe like once or twice every 30 minutes, like how the guild's doing. And then beyond that, we just kind of talk about general state of the race, like how other guilds are doing relative progression wise, interesting boss fights. We'll talk about just the state of the patch, state of the game. Like this patch, we talked about a lot of the corruption stuff. BOE purchasing of corruption was also a pretty hot topic. Corruption resistance, how much corruption people were running. I think corruption was like huge for this Race to World First because it's like a mechanic that we've never seen before with the patch. So we make sure that we hit on that pretty hard. In addition to that, once you're 200 pulls in N'Zoth, like you don't need to talk about it every single pull. You don't need to cast every single pull. I would say like the first couple of days of the Race to World First, you need to be pretty much like play-by-play casting, like what's on screen, talking about how the fights are going, that kind of thing. But then beyond that, especially once you're mini pulls deep into the Zoth, you can talk about whatever you want.
Yeah, day one was the day where it was just like back to back new stuff was being seen, and but then days 4 through 10 were literally all just N'Zoth progression, and except for when they were actually making progress, there was often not too much. As a caster, it was kind of your job to identify when something worth talking about was on the screen, and so you were always like watching, trying to see like, okay, the interesting things happening here. They've changed their positioning for Evoke Anguish or whatever. They brought in an extra rogue, let's talk about why they might have done that. But most polls, there wasn't something like that. So most polls, you could just talk about, like, if you didn't have anything to talk about, you could just be like, and here's how this mechanic works. But you gotta be, people get, that gets old really quick for the people that actually have been watching the whole time, hearing you explain the same mechanic 7 times.
How do you feel about people in chat being like, why aren't they talking about what they're seeing on screen right now?
Yeah, no matter what you do, you're gonna get people in chat, why are they explaining this mechanic for the 10th time? Why are they not talking about the boss fight at all, right? You can't, there's no way to avoid at least one of those questions being in chat, and honestly, you're probably gonna get both. No matter what balance you strike, people are gonna be unhappy in both directions on it.
Yeah, I mean, as a caster, you can't really take the opinions of people in chat too close to heart, right? Because if you take the negative ones, you also are going to take the positive ones. So I just tend to take neither of them. Like the good outweighs the bad usually, but you kind of have to balance them out. So I remember one of the things that we're always told, or I was always told, I don't know if you guys were told this as well, is when you're casting, you always have to assume that you have a new audience every 15 to 20 minutes, right? So you kind of need to cover things every now and then, but you don't need to always be talking about it every single pull. Like you're saying, you have to identify when you actually want to talk about what's going on screen. So like, for instance, when I came on to cast Vexiona on day 1, it was like, okay, phase 1, we saw it a couple times. We know how that works. Let's never talk about phase 1 again. And then when they get to phase 2, we actually, stop shooting the shit and talk about what's going on, talk about how they wiped last pull, talk about what they're doing differently to fix it, and so on and so forth. And it seemed to work out pretty well. But that was only a 20 pull boss, right? It gets a lot different for the N'Zoth, like you were mentioning. It's really hard to find something new to talk about when you're on pull 270.
We took a similar approach with how the MDI functions, with trying to know that people, like a new audience base, like rotates in every 15 to 20 minutes. But then it felt like we were just only doing play-by-play and explaining every ability. But I think we've struck a better balance this season.
That was what you guys were feeling bad about, like in previous seasons, right? I'm not feeling bad necessarily about it, but like, it
definitely changed,
right? Yeah.
Yes. Zyro, do you agree with that? Like, I feel like we've struck a better balance this season in terms of like how much explanation we're giving to like how mechanics end up working out versus like storytelling or just talking about like team versus team stuff or interesting pulls that are occurring on the screen, as opposed to just how this mechanic works versus this mechanic.
Yeah, actually, I think we did a really good job of that this season, but also, I think it's more important to see what other people think. But I think in terms of like what we were consciously trying to do with our casting, yeah, we definitely shied a lot away from just trying to explain mechanics over the course of the dungeon. really only kind of talking about it whenever something went wrong. And it's like, oh, okay, well, let's see what went wrong here. Like, why did that go wrong? I think that was definitely something we worked on a lot.
Yeah, there's kind of always like it's pretty easy to take like one note into every day of casting, right, and have that one thing be what you're working on. Harder to do more than one at once, but you know it's usually easy to go into a day of casting and be like, all right, today I'm going to work on this thing, you know.
Well, I think that we all give criticism to one another, and our bosses give us criticism as well on things that we need to work on in terms of like how to improve our own casting. Like for me, I'm pretty bad at not looking at the camera enough. I'll be honest. So whenever I had this problem in person too, is for some reason I'm not great at looking at the camera. So I make sure in my YouTube videos I try to practice it as much as possible. I think Randos also has the opposite problem where he looks at the camber too much.
I got that note in Race to the World first. They were like, dude, you gotta chill. Tettles is also another note that Tettles has famously received is be more excited about transmog.
I did a good job. I don't want to hear that, dude. I did a great job for that transmog event.
That was, I think, after a rehearsal where we just had this rehearsal where we practiced the transmog contest casting, and Tettles and I were just like going back and forth for a minute about Tettles was like of the transmog should be deleted.
Honestly, the game should be more like classic. I don't know what you're talking about. I feel like once you start removing away the ability for people to see your power via your transmog and tier sets, the game is really going downhill, and that's why I think classic is superior. I don't understand why you guys are like this.
Anyways, let's move on rapidly from that one to so we've got a little bit of MDI specific stuff coming up soon. The global finals are coming up on July 10th, 11th, and 12th. So that's in about 20 days. And we know all the teams that are going to be competing there. We don't know all the details of this event yet. I'm sure we'll learn more in the next some amount of time before it actually happens. But do you guys have any exciting predictions, any surprising predictions about a team that you think is going to like overperform its seeding in that tournament?
I think Ethical will get top 3.
Okay. Yeah, Ethical is North America's 2 seed. So we have Ethical, sorry, Method NA, Method EU are the top seeds of each side. And then there's like Ethical and Perplexed. And then the
Deplete from Beyond.
Yeah, the bottom 4 seeds are Deplete from Beyond, Complexity Limit, The Boys, and Goosey Bad. And I think that, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see those 4, like the 4 top seeded teams beating out the 4 bottom seeded teams in the first round. But I don't know. Did you see any upsets there? Xyronic, do you have any Complexity Limit fanboying to do here?
I don't know. Like, I don't know how hard they're going for it, right? I think, well, not only Complexity Limit, but also like both the 3 seeds from both regions are like look really strong too, depending on how much practice they put in. Like they can both be upset potential like machines as well. So yeah, depending on how much they practice and how prepared they are going into the event, it should be pretty interesting to see if they can upset either of the 2 seeds.
I know one of the premises on the creation of Deplete from Beyond is that they wanted to kind of go hard and be competitive, but they didn't want to put in like the 12 to 16 hours a day. So I wonder like how much they're going to like tool up for the global finals, or if they're actually going to, I guess, attempt to push for like that world first kind of thing, or like the world first thing, that like finals, like maybe if they put in enough practice, I think that roster has potential and that team has potential to be able to compete for top 2, top 3.
Yeah, Ethical
I think
as well.
There's just so many good teams. It's so hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perplexed, Method EU, and Method NA look like if you're taking a more conservative approach, Method EU, Perplexed, Method NA, probably solidly the top 3. Ethical and Deplete from Beyond look like they're somewhere in the middle. Then the Boys, Complexity Limit, and Goosey Bad all look to be about the same level as well, I think, from what I've seen.
Yeah, Complexity Limit, it's an interesting one, right? They're going to be lag free for the first time in their tournament, right? They've had a player with lag issues in all the cups so far, but now they are like flying him out to play from a good internet connection. So I don't know. Complexity Limit is also a team of their, like you were talking about Deplete from Beyond, whether or not they had the ability to play for 12 hours a day or whatever. Complexity Limit certainly does if they choose to, right? If their priority is trying to win this thing, they are a roster of people who play that many hours of games seriously multiple times per year, right? Like Race to World First. Even in other games, they have players that, sometimes compete in those things. So I could see Complexity Limit having some upward potential there as well, to do the Complexity Limit fanboying here.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason that I'm like kind of not, instantly saying, "Oh yeah, they can take it easily," is I remember at the end of the third MDI, they were all kind of burnt out, just kind of sick of dealing with the internet problems, right? They were super over it. So if they still feel like that, then who knows? But those guys are definitely like individually skilled players, and all bias aside, I think they can play. They can compete pretty well.
Yeah, I do think though that the Method EU, Method NA, Perplexed are clearly like those teams. Complexity Limit has some high potential, but those three teams have consistently realized their potential in the games we've seen out of them so far. So yeah, I think that they're very much gonna own it. I think that Ethical versus Deplete from Beyond matchup that's one of the first four that we'll see is gonna be super hype. So that's gonna be my favorite one, I think, of the first day.
Something that's interesting to me is that they said that they are going to have gearing on the TR more accurately reflect gearing on live, including cloak resistance in terms of how much corruption people are able to wear.
And sockets,
I wonder if
right?
it's going to, and sockets. I wonder how that's going to affect the meta. Like, I think all pieces of gear are able to be socketed, and now they also have, 89 corruption resistance?
89 on the cloak,
so how much we had last week?
Yep, so 89 corruption resistance on the cloak. Is that going to change the meta, do you think?
Yeah.
Is there any room for mages to move up?
Could do, yeah. I mean, it's going to depend on like what keystone level they set the tournament at, which I don't know what that's going to be yet or anything. But
it like has to be 21, right?
I could be higher, could be lower. I guess it can't really be lower if they're giving everybody those cloak resistance.
So it was 19 before. I guess it technically could be 20, but I think
giving everybody 40 cloak resistance and sockets it would make
21's a safe assumption. Yeah.
Well, but they might want to go harder, right? Like in Legion, they had an MDI go as high as 24, right?
26.
26 was the finals.
26, okay, yeah.
26 is the finals of the LAN. That was, and for the regional stage, 24 was the highest. For global final or for the LAN to be 26s. People started playing push comps, so we're actually just doing
just weekly no levering their keys.
There was some deplete. There was almost a deplete, I think, a couple of times where it's just like, holy shit, dude.
Yeah,
you had Mitt who played Windwalker the whole entire time, swapped to his fucking druid because he didn't know how to live on a Windwalker on a 26. It was just obscure shit that was happening.
Yeah, I think you're probably right that it'll probably be lower than that, but I don't think we can know for sure until they, make a decision or anything. And I expect they probably won't do that whole keystone leveling up thing that they did that previous time, but they could. I mean, that is a trick.
God, I hope not.
They did that a little bit in the cups this time, and they walked it back. So I think they're probably not going to, though, right?
It creates intense player burnout, just because of how many hours you have to practice and like how much time you have to put in every dungeon. If you have to practice the same dungeon twice on 2 different key levels, you basically have to practice that. You have to reroute that dungeon a second time.
Well, you don't practice it. That's the thing. No one does that. You just take your lower level strat, hope it works on the high key. Practice it once or twice. If it kind of works, you're like, all right, we're good. Hopefully we don't wipe.
Yeah, it makes that upper bracket advantage even higher, right? Because then you got the few hours to practice on the high key level while the other team's still playing their matches. And it also just makes practice so good. And I think it's good to keep the MDI away from having like different keystone levels or different comp requirements for the same map, which a lot of people's advice or suggestions for the MDI boils down to like make people play different comps in the maps. And every time you do that, you're just opening up huge extra branches into the amount of maps they have to practice with each comp, and that is really tough.
Do you think MDI should be more like live or less like live?
I don't know. I kind of want to see a Race to World First style Mythic Plus event. You know how we were talking about like the Tour de France versus
I know what you're talking about, yeah.
Versus like a football game or whatever. I want to see a Mythic Plus race to world first, right? Like a Mythic Plus where it's not just teams competing against each other. It's like teams pushing keys over the course of a day, a week, a month, or whatever, and like you tuning into them and like watching them all doing that, and an esports version of just push keys. I think could be really fun to watch. I think if your goal is to have MDI in its current form, it's better that it is lower keys than if it were done at 28s or whatever. That would be miserable.
I think part of the problem with higher keys too is that so one broadcast time, you're gonna have people depleting keys if you start getting the keys too high, especially in the 24 to 25 range. People are gonna want to start going big, to be able to compete versus the other team. But if they start depleting the key, dude, we may be there for a long time. Those broadcast days are already kind of long, so anything that makes us stay there for 12 hours, please no.
Yeah,
I'm also worried that it just wouldn't be fun to watch.
That's the thing, right? Is watching teams push keys can be exciting and fun to hop between their streams, but watching a 1 hour King's Rest plus 27 deplete or whatever from whatever team that becomes a deplete 5 minutes in and they're just no levering it the rest of the way through. That is a slog that you want to avoid, I think, on the MDI stream.
Yeah, 100%. It's not. I don't think it would make for a very entertaining MDI style stream.
Yeah. All right, Yoda in chat.
Double weekly no lever junkyard is the best MDI content this year from Yoda TV in the chat.
That's true, but even that. So that was there was one weekend where just 7 different junkyards got scuffed in the EU region, and it was really fun to watch. Okay. But they were scuffed, and it was 25 minutes was a scuffed time, right? 25 minutes of fun team scuffing, and then we got out of there. If the default timer in the key was 30 minutes, and the scuffed time was an hour, that's a lot less good than if the default time is 15 minutes and the scuffed time is 25 minutes.
Also, part of it is the most memorable stuff is either the most epic of plays. So Zamak kiting the obelisk in this MDI was the most epic of plays, and you'll remember how that went down because of it, or the team fiestaing the match. And obviously, you can pick whichever fiesta you would like to remember from previous MDIs. There's been a couple that come to mind immediately for me, but
Seat of the Triumvirate.
King's Rest.
There was that bomb in Seat of the Triumvirate of 79 deaths, but that was
against a team, Parse Culture, team of my guildies back then. Back before I was involved in it at all.
But yeah, so it's teams either love a really funny fiesta or they love the most epic of plays. But if it's not even a fiesta, if it's just a sad deplete, a sad, long, drawn out deplete, you're get me out. Yeah.
Well, somebody in chat asks, what is a fiesta? Tettles, can you define the term fiesta for us?
Okay, so it's whenever you have a birthday party and somebody brings out the piñata. All right, so they're lowering down the piñata and it's sitting right here. And you go and swing your bat at the piñata and you miss once. And you're all right, no big deal. I'll swing again. And you miss a second time. And you're third time's the charm. And you miss a third time. That's a fiesta, is whenever you continue to miss the piñata. And then it's no longer a party, it's a fiesta.
All right, let's move on from that one. Let's move on to our tip of the week segment, which we've got sandwiched between some of our main topic stuff to talk about this week. My tip of the week this week is that aspect of the turtle behaves differently from most other immunities in that it is a deflect rather than an immune. And deflect is rolled when the projectile is created or when the ability is cast, rather than when the projectile would land on you. So for something like Spit Gold in King's Rest, you have to be in your ice block when the gold would hit you, and then you'll immune it. But Spit Gold, if you're trying to turtle it, you need to be turtled when the Spit Gold cast finishes, and then you can drop your turtle when the Spit Gold hits you, it will still get deflected. So that's a different timing window with turtle versus every other immunity in the game, pretty much. All right, Zyra, do you have a tip of the week for us this week? I don't know if we got you to pick one or anything.
I was gonna say something, but then that would just promote pretty toxic gameplay, so no tip from me.
Xyronic is back. I remember what his was actually, yeah. Who He's keeping his favor though with an
That was
unnamed
getting locked away
class.
in the treasure chest.
Yeah. All right. Tettles, instead of a tip of the week, has a clip of the week as always, and this one is an educational one from Nerf Tank TV's stream from Operation Mechagon Workshop. What's going on in this clip, Tettles?
So you see the whole entire group from Nerf's team is running away, and they're running down the stairs and out of line of sight and out of range of these robots. Nerf ends up pulling all of these Mark III and Mark II robots. He line of sights their arcing zap cast, then dips out of line of sight to get the arcing zap cast synced. He will shockwave if he sees that he needs to, because those two Mach 1 robots can be shockwaved and stunned to be able to resync their arcing zap cast. And then he spell reflects to be able to put the arcing zap back onto those robots, doing a stupid amount of damage.
Yeah, and saving a huge amount of damage as well from his team, because those first set of arcing zaps can be so deadly because they line up with then, like, you dispel one of them and then you still have a big problem as the short out comes out. So, yeah. Excellent ability there.
What was that thing at the end where your voice got like really deep? What were you trying to do there? I can't be the only one that noticed that, right?
Nothing. I'm not trying to do anything.
Tettle's giving us some ASMR. Being I don't know. Anyways, next topic for the week we're going to talk a little bit about the Shadowlands legendary data mining, which is something that came out a couple days ago. Yeah,
Have you had a chance to look at these?
I did. I've seen some of them. Some of them are. I'm surprised that they went with some of these. To be honest with you,
there's been some good content as well. If you guys want to watch specifically for the mage ones, Complexity Limits Preheat has a great video where it just talks for like 20 minutes about the mage ones. I watched that yesterday, and it is very enlightening about how all of those are looking. Anyways,
you know something that's funny about that, Dratnos.
What's up,
is Preheat and I were sitting in a channel. We've been sitting in Discord for a while, right? A bunch of people on Limit, because we're talking about what we're doing for the PoE leagues. And he's like, dude, have you seen these mage legendary changes? They're sick. And we talked about them for like 10-15 minutes. And I'm like, you should just go make a Dratnos style video talking about this. And he's like, I'll do that right now. And he just went and made that video.
Was there a spreadsheet?
No, he's just looking at the page.
There was a spreadsheet.
That's another classic Dratnos style video where you just put your webcam on, you put your WoW head in the background, and you just talk about all things.
That's a great video. Honestly, those are the best, because they're like topic style videos and you get your point across pretty easily, but then you also have like something to be able to talk over a reference if you need a reference point.
Yeah.
So that video was inspired by you, Dratnos.
Wow, that is. I knew there was a reason I thought it was such a great video. Okay.
Epic.
We have Mage, DK, and Warrior legendaries. Some of them data mined here. Not all of them. A lot of them, though, are from old Legion legendary effects here. So DK, for instance, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the 16 legendaries that have been data mined here for DK are
There's also
old
a
Legion
Kata
effects.
tier sets. I don't understand why they choose Kata. Did Kata just have the most insane tier sets or something?
Yeah, I think they're just picking popular tier sets from the past. Some of these are WAD, like the Firestorm one is a WAD tier set.
Dude, that fire one is disgusting. I can't believe they chose that one.
I don't know. It looks pretty fun. Looks pretty epic.
No, it is fun. That's the thing. It's too strong though. Like, class bias aside, Mage always tends to get the most fun shit to play with. I don't know what the deal is, but they got it again here from the 3 classes that we're seeing.
Shard of the Exodar too. They got a nerfed version of Shard of the Exodar, but that is still one of the most fun legendaries to play with.
Dude, can you imagine this Spell Reflect one for Prot Warriors in Mythic Plus? Spell Reflection lasts 200% longer and applies to your party.
Adderus and Aspects.
Excuse me?
Adderus and Aspects?
Yeah,
Cyclone Strike.
Oh my god. Yeah, 4 members of your party just stand under the Cyclone Strike and you literally just one-shot Adderus. Yeah, that would be cool. Some of these are really cool abilities, activating Bladestorm, Recklessness, or Avatar randomly casts one of the other 2 abilities.
That's dope. That's so cool.
That's so cool.
Okay, so I like how they're going with the most overpowered of shit for these legendary effects, but even still, there's still a dilemma of you have to pick between utility versus damage, but at least this time around, the legendaries are craftable, so you can target what you want.
Yeah, because next to those things, there's Heroic Leap gains 2 additional charges. The old legendary shoulders for warrior coming back. And like for mage, here's a good example of this where one of them is like casting any barrier spell grants the effects of all 3 of them, and they each have 40% effectiveness, so you get like a slightly bigger shield and also the effects of all 3 of them. And like that seems really strong, right? But how are you ever picking that over a damage one in most PvE cases, right? Like how is that a choice you can make? So what I would actually really love to see, here's my pitch for Shadowlands legendaries. Instead of picking one of these effects, you pick an offensive effect and a defensive / utility effect, and get your legendary item with both of those effects on it. You could do that instead. That would be so epic. I would be so happy. I
like that because the defensive and utility shit is almost like it's so cool. Like a lot of the time, okay, some of them are lame. Like 100% AMS shield. All right, that's kind of lame, but like whatever, I get it, right? But the double triple leap thing for warriors, that's fun. Like a lot of the utility stuff is actually fun. But whenever you make players pick between utility versus damage, they're always going to side in the way of damage.
Yeah, except for when they have to, right? And you get these like cases where you're like, all right, we have to play a defensive legendary for this reason or for this fight, but it's never as fun to do that, right? So yeah, that would be my biggest wish list item right now for Shadowlands legendaries.
And that has actually happened in the past, by the way. There have been fights in progression where, like, I specifically remember in Legion, for what was the name of the boss? The sisters boss in Taurus, the 4 sisters.
Coven, yeah.
Coven of Shavar. We literally said, okay, if you don't have a personal for every single one of those comet storms, the green meteors that one-shot people, put on Prydaz. And we had like 15 people with Prydaz on for that fight.
Yeah, Prydaz.
So that does happen.
Prydaz was just a great progression legendary for if you were putting that on, you were often making a good progression decision for your guild, but you're making a bad decision for your damage, and that felt bad.
Hunter wore it in every single situation because of their secondary stat scaling. Marksmanship did.
Yeah.
That was their survivability was also questionable at best.
Mm-hmm. There were some cases where also like healers, like some like wrestler shaman would just wear those legs that healed them when they standed still because like that's the best HPS they could get out of legendary.
The earthen root legs or whatever.
Yeah, the roots of Shaladrasil. Yeah.
That was really funny.
A wild time.
Are some legendaries locked behind covenants or no? Are you able to wear any legendary regardless of what covenant you have equipped?
So far, these parts of them don't have like covenant interactions, but I've heard that there was covenant interactions with legendaries. This stuff that's been data mined so far doesn't look like it interacts with them yet, though. But so we'll have to see exactly what that looks like.
I know the soulbinds are supposed to, but I don't know about the legendaries.
Yeah, soulbinds are definitely covenant specific. The legendaries, how they interact with covenants, I don't know.
I'm gonna be so sad if I have to pick my covenant based on what legendary I have to play.
Yeah, let's not think anymore about covenants, man. I want to be excited about Shadowlands, so we can't think about covenants at all for that to happen.
I'm super stoked for the legendaries, and I'm glad that they picked the most powerful of legendaries to bring back. And some of these are like 10 to 15% damage gains. Like, that's wild.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm definitely happy. Like, this post is one that has made me very happy. The one with all these data mine legendaries. These are good effects. I'm overall happy to see this. Again, just hopeful that they bring it in a direction where we're not like making choices that feel bad at the end of the day, which is my big worry about the covenant system in general.
I think the World of Warcraft in general creates a lot of apathy, and it's like, what don't I have as opposed to what I do have. Mm-hmm. I don't know how to fix that. Zyro, do you have any idea?
No. I mean, it's always going to be like that, right? What can I do to make I mean, specifically, I think the problem you're looking at is what does that other person have that I don't have, or how can I make my character better? And that's just kind of a consequence of being an RPG game, right? Like, you're always going to have something you can do to make a character better, and if you don't, then the game just doesn't really feel worth playing. So I don't really think there's really any easy solution to fix that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are cases where there's like stuff that it feels stupid that you're like, okay, like we're on this fight and I picked this covenant, and that makes me feel arbitrarily weaker. But I agree with you that like you always could have done more content and gotten more gear and stuff, and that that should be a a reasonable. That's just part of the game for sure.
Yeah. Now I noticed something you don't have here in the show notes that I just thought of. I mean, what are some legendary effects or set bonuses from classes that we haven't seen that you'd like to see?
Oh yeah, Squishy just asked this in the chat as well. He says he knows Tettles wants Onet's intuition back.
I also want Impeccable Fell Essence. Yeah, I want both of those to be dope for Moonkin. Impeccable Fell Essence is like you get cooldown reduction on your CD whenever you use Astral Power, based on Astral Power spend. And Onet's Intuition is like you had a 20% chance to proc a free Starfall. Every single time you cast Star Surge, you had 20% chance to proc a free Star Surge every single time you press Starfall. Those are both dope. So I like those back for Druid, but
I would
any rogue ones for you, Dratnus, or any interesting ones that you liked?
I would like Cephas's Secret to return.
You stole mine. I want Cephas back too.
That Cephas's Secret, it just reminds me that we used to get Gift of the Titans not just in Horrific Visions, man. We used to just get it in all content, and it was so fun.
Well, I liked how Cephas's was gated behind having to use a hard CC ability. I thought that was an interesting interaction because sometimes you could just like throw out your Shockwave or throw out like whatever to proc your Cephas, or you could just like interrupt some menial spell to proc it. Sometimes you had to wait and be like very cautious about when you were using your stuff.
So you're not advocating for it going back to like being just a hard, like you still think interrupts and dispels and stuff procking it are good, right?
Yeah, because it creates more diversity in which classes can proc it.
Because the original version was only hard CCs.
Yes, I remember that, and it was also like really bad haste wise. I think like I don't know. Should it be a generic though? I hate generics in the game. I think generics just make the game so bland.
Yeah, just for whatever class I'm maining. That's the only one I care about having Cephas. So whatever I pick, I'll let Blizzard know. Just give that. Actually, probably just whichever one they give Cephas to will be whatever I main. So
would you want Flashpoint for Warlock, Zyra?
No. So here's the one that I'm thinking for Warlock. All right, and this is a little out there, and they'd have to do some finicking to make it work. But I want Charred Remains back for Destruction.
What does that do?
That was the one that made your non-shard using abilities do less damage, but you also generated, I think it was 2 or 3 times more shards.
Oh, that's actually super interesting.
Okay, yeah, hang on. Here's a picture of it from long ago.
I still keep coming back to this point that Dratnus made, where I think that we should have to equip one legendary of offensive, one defensive legendary. I think that's actually just such a good call.
Well, I mean, you get to craft your legendary, right? Like, you could literally just craft those two components together and make an item that has both on it.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah.
But
think about how much more Torghast farming that would let us do, right? We would instead of just having like 12 legendaries that you could farm out or whatever, you could farm out like 144 different combinations of effects.
How many permutations am I going to have to create?
Yeah. Oh. That would
and this is why Dratnus has been overlooked for developer of World of Warcraft for many years.
This is an idea that gets you more player retention as well as better gameplay.
Shut up! Oh my god!
It's gonna own. Okay, all right. Let's move on to our final topic of the week, where we are going to complain about World of Warcraft a little bit. This week we're going to complain about Malefic Cores. Tettles, you have made a video about complaining about Malefic Cores. You may now have a 1 minute or 30 second or whatever version of your pitch for that.
Currently, we are 13 weeks out of the Malefic Cores being added to your cape, of which we hit rank 15 for the first time. And now people who are completely starting alts from anew are closer to hitting 125 than they would be to catching up with the pre-existing player base. Meaning that you are 13 weeks out from being able to hit 125 as a very brand new character in which you get from your Shadowlands pre-order. And this is pretty bad for alts, people who delayed playing the game. I don't know. I went on a boat vacation for 4 months and I'm still behind. Who really knows? Who's to say what the problem is here? But now a lot of people are behind and it's really fucking annoying.
Yeah, it's tough as well because, like, not only are you behind, but you also are just looking at killing N'Zoth every week on your alt to catch it up as well. I don't know if you guys have characters like this where you're just like, yeah, I want to play this character, but I don't want to kill N'Zoth 13 times once per week for the next 13 weeks to catch it up. Like,
why is it okay? Yeah, I agree with that. Why is it you have to kill N'Zoth and you have to do a horrific vision? Why couldn't you just do like two N'Zoths
visions,
or 2 horrific visions? Yeah.
Yeah, if it was that catch up, it would be so much less bad, I think.
Or why can't you just spam horrific visions to get multiple malefic cores a week, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
it'd be so easy to implement.
It would be really nice to, I think at this point, like, so Blizzard has this argument that like it's a minor catch up or whatever, and it's minor and you can already catch up, but like,
well, now it's 42 resistance.
42 is not minor, right? 3 is minor. 42 is not minor.
42 is like 8,000 DPS for DPS players.
Yeah, it's even like you could probably do the same content. It just feels so bad to be time gated behind such a long time gate. Even if it's, you know, if it's something like sockets, right? Sockets is something you can kind of write off as, and some people even have a problem with sockets. I don't have a problem with sockets. That's something that's like,
I think grinding through the sockets is totally fine, especially since you can buy those vessels via echoes of Nyloth. I'm totally fine with sockets because you're able to buy the vessels.
Like it's a long grind, but it's not time gated, right? It's you can just get your sockets by playing a lot of the game, and you know, sockets are a small enough thing, but the corruption is a large thing.
My issue with this is 13 weeks. Like you can absolutely have it be, I don't know, 3 weeks behind, 2 weeks behind, 4 weeks behind, 12 resistance, 9 resistance. Both of those are totally fine. 42 resistance.
Alts are just behind by so much longer than they were behind by when they didn't have essences, right? Like when you didn't have your rank 3 essence, you were like at most 4 weeks away from having it, of playing. And essences not being account wide was like the most egregious thing they've ever done to alts. And now this is just like, you know, it's a less impactful grind for sure. It's less impactful to be missing.
I think the legendary ring was worse. The wild legendary ring.
Okay, whatever. I didn't play back then. So the most egregious thing they've done ever since I've been paying attention.
That was a 12-week grind for that WoD legendary ring, by the way, and you had to go back into High Mall and Blackrock Foundry. That was
trinkets and Legion were done too.
Yeah. Well, okay, so Legendary Legion, the reason that they were bad is because it wasn't deterministic, right? For a long portion of the expansion, rather. It was
no, I'm talking about the trinket from the last boss.
Oh,
the one
the Pantheon.
The trinket.
Oh, but again, like how far behind were you if you had a 960 trinket versus a 1000 item level trinket or whatever? Like
it was pretty similar. It was 5 item levels a week, right? So it's pretty similar to what we're at right now. But that was hard capped. This isn't.
Well, this is hard capped eventually at 125. We think.
Okay, but after what is that? 25 weeks?
Yes. So it's effectively not capped, right?
You know, until September.
A 25-week cap is a very different thing than a 10-week cap or whatever. Even is a hugely different thing.
I would also say that a large portion of the benefit of the trinket just came from the trinket itself, where like if you're actively able to wear more corruption pieces, that is a significant damage gain over like not being able to wear as much.
All right. So yeah, all of us, I think we all kind of just agree. It's so demoralizing as well to be looking at this. It's so hard to have a desire to start up an alt.
People ask me if they should hop back into the game right now. They're like, "Oh, I got a fresh 120 boost for my Shadowlands pre-launch. Should I hop back in?" Like, no, don't hop back in.
Yeah, it's tough because like I really want to recommend yes. Like if people ask like, "Hey, I want to play WoW," but if you're just like looking at it, you're like, all right, look, by the time, especially if you're a new character, you still have to go through the essences the old way, right? So I'm just looking at these characters and I'm just like, all right, look, man, you need to get your essences, you need to do your grind, you need to get your Pathfinder, you know, you need to do your cloak grind. You're like 4 months away or 3 months.
I recommend them hopping in 1 month.
At least the first month is like awful grinding as well before you're caught up. And I'm looking at that and I'm like, no, you probably shouldn't come back. And like, I do not want to be saying that. Like, I want to be saying, yes, come back and play WoW, man. Like that.
It's the voice of the people. I don't want to be saying that either, dude. I wish I could just recommend it, but I'm like, nah, dude, the grind is too long and arduous. Absolutely just come back like a month before Shadowlands comes out. Get some gear, get some corruption that'll help you level a little bit. Get some essences that'll help you level a little bit. It's just come back later.
It's just insane to me that like they don't see this as a problem, and it's insane to me that they don't see it as a problem when you and I are telling people to not come back to the game. And it's insane to me that they're trying to talk about how Shadowlands is going to be alt friendly, and they can't change the one line of codes to let Malefic cores drop. in BFA. It's insane that
No. It's not that they can't. They explicitly said that they
Right.
had no intentions on doing it.
It's insane to me that they're asking us to like believe that Shadowlands is going to be alt friendly and that they're gonna be receptive on this when there's such an easy thing for them to do to make the last 6 months of BFA fun, and they're just not willing to do it. And I don't get it. I don't understand why they choose for the game to not be as good as it could be.
So something that's interesting to me is I think that they don't understand the value of the hardcore casual in their game. I feel like as of late, there have been like a pretty substantial... Okay, so like obviously casual make up a lot of the player base, but I feel like there's been a substantial increase in the like hardcore casual scene, like the people who want to do more than just a weekly 15. They want to be doing more keys than that a week. They want to start pushing further into mythic raids, maybe getting that pretty late cutting edge. Like they don't want to get it like a bleeding edge. They don't want to raid that much, but they want to raid, I don't know, like 9 to 12 hours a week, which is a pretty considerable amount of time relative to like other player bases. So they want to put a substantial time into the game. And I feel like the hardcore casual scene has increased in that regard.
Yeah,
like they're
even
not...
if they just want to do weekly 15s, they want to do it with powerful characters, right? They want to do it with a character that doesn't feel suboptimal, right? And they like know how to inspect their character and like know what it's supposed to look like. Yeah.
And it's just like the fact that they just feel delayed and like far behind on their ability to be able to help. It's just all players. I feel like, dude, my hunter, like character that I re-rolled to, I've put an astounding amount of time into, is still behind on corruption resistance.
I mean, my mage that I've been pushing on for the past 3 months just now caught up to with corruption resistant this week. So yeah, I get it. It's bad.
All right. In addition to changes that Blizzard has made or not made that has made players upset, Warcraft Logs has also made some changes that have made some players upset. This one is a lot less controversial, though. Well, maybe not less controversial, but
let's let Zyro take this one.
The controversy is a lot more stupid, shall we say? Okay, so Warcraft Logs made some changes, and they removed Hivemind, Drestigath, and Skitra from All-Star points, and then they made a lot of the other All-Star points based on like weighted damage. So they removed damage to like synapses,
Psychus, antigens.
Yes, yeah, they removed bonus damage to Psychus from that, so they calculated it as if Psychus was taking damage, unbuffed and all those things. Do any of you guys have an opinion about this? Zyro, do you have an opinion about this action by Warcraft Logs?
You're a log site. Stop trying to rewrite the book on what makes a player good and just put the logs up there. The all-star points don't matter. Like, I think every player has this phase that they go through where like, oh, I want to get some rank 1 logs, but you get over it really quickly and you're just happy with putting up good logs. I don't think anyone really cares too much about the changes being made. I think it's more the concept that the owner of the website is trying to do more than they should with it. It just seems so weird to me.
Yeah, on the other hand, like the information still goes up and stuff. Okay, one thing that has been weird for me is like when you look at your Warcraft logs now, you're seeing different numbers than you do in details because like some of that damage is being omitted and more than just like damage that got fully healed by Drestigath, but which I think was always fine to omit.
The Psychus damage is bananas. Like, okay, so the Psychus and like the antigens are probably the like two of the bigger ones. I would say the cysts somewhat too, because I don't know about other people, but I actually sit there and hit the cysts and let my mages just bomb into the synapses anyways. But like the Psychus damage, you have cooldowns specifically allocated at different points into Psychus, and mages are definitely overkilling that boss whenever they have to combust into him, if they have to combust into him. And it's, I don't know. I think that I agree with that. I think it feels a bit weird just that there is more than just Drestigath's healing whenever you don't have the buff. I feel like that one made a lot more sense to me.
I think that trying to make all-star points, like, okay, here's the thing, right? All-star points, they're already such a weird metric. I think trying to make them trying to make them fairer or whatever is fine because they were never fair to begin with, right? That's fine. But I think we're making it so that when I go to my Warcraft logs page and like we look at the log we just uploaded from this week, and the numbers like now are not actually the numbers that we did, right? They've been doctored or whatever based on what the weighted damage formula is. That is something that I don't like. I like being able to just go to logs and like look at them as a source of like actually what happened during this fight. and that has gotten a little bit harder to do here. Now you have to click the view unfiltered damage thing.
Is it because people were just like blatantly abusing and padding that this is even occurring?
Yeah, I think it's they wanted to make the they wanted to make it more better. They wanted to make the numbers look more, right.
Accurate of like what
they wanted it to be
what the actual damage
optimizing
is?
for your number here was optimizing for killing the bosses more, right? And they wanted to make it so you didn't like do weird stuff to get more damage in your parse. But the thing is, there's always going to be weird stuff you can do to parse better. You can just stand in mechanics and like do really weird things. There's always something you can do that is not going to help kill the boss that is going to help you parse. And I don't think you win by getting in that arms race.
How long until ads on Zanesh are removed because somebody decided that they're just gonna ping pong the ball like on top of one another and just like spam holy pallies with the prop pallies with their shield? Yeah, to just interrupt everything. Fuck it. It's just like you just blast off on the ads. There's always something stupid that you can do to be able to just pad, or you just like let every single ad go through on Il'gynoth and you just like stack up the bloods and you let a mage just combust into the boss while the bloods are underneath them or something just dumb like that. Like, then are they going to remove damage dealt to the Ickers on Il'gynoth? Are they going to remove damage dealt to the ads on Zanesh? Like, where do you stop? Like, where is the breaking point with something like that?
Yeah, that's why I'd like it to be more like do whatever you want for the All-Stars formula, but for the actual like parses on bosses and stuff, just leave it as damage, I'd say.
I think that once you start like starting to edit some of the stuff out, you kind of get deep into the rabbit hole and there's no real way of fixing it. And I think just like leaving it as like more of a community driven bullshit arbitrary thing is fun.
The thing here though is that like this was done with like polls, right? Like polls were made and community
Oh, sorry, never mind. I just got a DM. Spawning extra awakened terrors on Zanesh will now result in an invalid log for that fight.
How much is extra?
I think probably more than 3 per.
Okay. Wait, more than 3? Guilds legitimately spawn 4 per. There's 4 kick strategies for each of those phases.
I mean, how are you supposed to determine what's the correct strategy then, right?
Right, exactly. So it's nice. One of the nice things about not stepping in is that you're not making a determination of what the correct strategy is. All right. Anyways. Let's move on.
That's a really funny DM that I just got. I'm glad that somebody sent that to me.
Let's move on to Q&A here to end out our show for this week, as we are getting a little bit over an hour here, and I know Zyro has some Path of Exile to go play, so we'll try not to keep him here for too much longer. First question comes from Cardinarch at Tettles. Leading question: anyone you guys see in the community that would be a great addition to the desk in the future?
One comes to mind instantly for me.
Who is it?
It's somebody that we were talking to for a while. Yeah, Preheat's the secondary one, but I think when we were all talking about casters to add to the rotation for this past India, one of the people we were all talking about was Vitamin P.
Interesting. I think getting some diversity on the desk would be nice. I think
Growl
Vitamin
as well.
Growl would be very interesting to actually come at us. That guy,
Man, Growl owned on our show a couple episodes ago. I think he could be a good addition as well. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There are so many great content creators out there that, and there's so.
I think if JB wanted to retire or Yoda didn't want to do MDI again, like both of those guys would be insanely good on the desk as well.
I cannot imagine Yoda not wanting to just do MDI every time, and JB for that matter. But yeah.
I can't imagine, but I think just the wealth of knowledge that they bring about how the game functions, they would just kick ass in the analyst role. I think both of those guys would be sick too.
Nerf are good.
Nerf would also do for the same reasons Yoda and JB would do a great job, just in terms of like the ability to be able to analyze what's going on. I think all of those guys would make great analysts for the MDI desk.
Okay, I look at these other questions that we've got written down here, and we actually got to both of these during the show. That owns. So I guess we're kind of through here, the Q&A part. That's pretty cool. Is there anything else we missed here today? Anything that, Zyro, on any of these topics that you wanted to add to any of them that I didn't, queue you up for?
Nothing comes to mind. I think
All
I
right.
got everything I wanted to say out.
In that case, then why don't you tell everybody where they can find you and what you're going to be streaming and stuff and all those
Oh,
things? And
jeez. At Limit Xyronic on Twitter, Xyronic on Twitch. That's about it. Stream
All right.
Keys, Stream Path of Exile.
heck yeah. Definitely imagine that will be happening in the near future then today. For now, though, that's going to be the end of our episode. We'll be back next week with another one with Trell returning. Thanks so much for being on our show, Xyronic. Bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for having me.